the first panel here for our PEAC Global Shapers Leadership and Service Series. I'm really excited to see all of you guys here, and hope that you can benefit from this exchange between myself and these esteemed members of the Global Shapers community. A little bit about PEAC and Global Shapers. PEAC is a Houston-based NPO that empowers youth to work on community service projects, whether that's college students or high school students. And Global Shapers is an arm of the World Economic Forum and is a network of young people driving action and change in their communities. So with that being said, we have 3 great speakers today. And I'm sure you all will be very happy to hear from all of them. So with that being said, we can go ahead and just get started. I'll just go ahead and lead into the first question here. Let me preview this. Okay, so whoever wants to start first, could you just introduce yourself, talk about like what you do, and just share with our students, what you do in your job, right? A day in the life of your job. So, Eduardo, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Eduardo Marquez. I'm an attorney at Sidley, Austin, which is a global law firm headquartered in Chicago, but with offices all over the US, Europe, and Asia. I am a corporate attorney, which means that I am not a litigator. Basically, what I do is I help companies to do transactions. Specifically, I help them with their mergers and acquisitions. So when a company wants to buy another company, or they want to sell a subsidiary or acquire a business, they come to us to draft all the paperwork needed. So as a corporate associate, my life is a little bit different as the life of my colleagues who are litigation associates, and they go to court and they fight with the other side, and they try to, get a good judgment. As you can see from my accent, I'm originally from Mexico. I went to law school in Mexico, and then I studied my master's here in the US, and I took the Texas bar. So I'm licensed to practice law in the US and Mexico. And, one day in the life of a corporate lawyer could be described as, going to the office and, making sure that whatever deals you have going on are well served, meaning that you always have tasks that require to be performed for a specific client. So let's say that, my client wants to buy a company, so we have to draft the purchase and sale agreement. Or let's say that my client wants to, purchase oil and gas assets. So we help them doing that with the contracts. Once we draft all the contract and, we discuss it with the client, then we send it to the other side. So if we are the sellers, we send it to the buyers, and then buyer's counsel would review the contract, then they'll mark it up, and then send it back to us, and then perhaps we would have, if it's not COVID times, we would have a negotiation meeting, and it can be a face-to-face meeting, like the ones you've seen on TV, where you had, large conference tables and people in one side and people on the other side, and the dynamic varies, but usually just to have a sense for you guys, it'll be like, you'll go literally paragraph by paragraph, talking about the points that are open on the negotiations. And that's one of the parts of my job that I really like. I love to advocate for my client. I love to negotiate and really be in that room, trying to get the best deal and understanding the issues that happen around transactions, because every transaction is obviously different. It's not always the same, which is also something that I really like. So that is what a day or a week in my life would normally look like.
Great, Eduardo. Thank you for that so much. Dozie, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit
Yeah,
about?
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Dozie. I grew up in Nigeria and then moved to US for undergrad. And I've gone back and forth. I lived in England, Nigeria, and in the US. I moved back to Houston. I lived here years ago, left for school, and then moved back 2 years ago. And I love Houston. So I started off as an industrial engineer. I studied engineering in undergrad, worked for GE as an industrial engineer, and then went back to school to study business. And now I work as a management consultant for a company called Boston Consulting Group. And essentially, kind of like what Eduardo was describing, you know, a client will employ a company like BCG, where I work, to help it with, you know, something is doing. It could be a transaction, it could be maybe understanding the market, doing some market research. But generally, I would say it's business advice or policy advice. So the mayor of Houston may ask BCG, you know, to advise his office on the decision they're trying to make, or, you know, a company, you know, like Coca-Cola may decide to use BCG to decide, you know, whether to enter a new market or buy a new company, or, you know, things like that. For a day in the life, maybe I'll talk about the last project I worked on. So a client in one of the big oil companies, they reached out to BCG about figuring out its long-term strategy. So it's, you know, considering all that's happening in the world, the company was interested in knowing for the next 30 years, like what are the, you know, potential changes that could happen in the world and that could affect the oil industry. It seems like a big question, and, you know, there are methods and frameworks you use to make sure you're able to get to an answer soon, right? Because we had about 6 weeks. So in one day, you know, I could show up to the office and, you know, we're trying to figure out technology trends, right? Like what's happening, what kind of technologies are coming up that may substitute oil, right? You know, for example, electric vehicles, right, will make us need less oil, and what are the implications? You know, you may try to think about investors, like what do investors think about when they think about oil companies? And a lot of this you get from interviews, like interviewing experts, doing research on your own, and then the knowledge you already have. And, you know, one interesting piece that I worked on was like some potential targets for mergers and acquisitions. So the company was also looking to buy companies. So I did research around what companies would be good, you know, companies to buy, and then recommended 5 companies. So I think what I like about the job is that it's a good job for a generalist, for someone with a technical background, or who is interested in business and policy. And the questions tend to be very all over the place. You could have, you know, I could work on this kind of a similar deal to Eduardo, where I'm, you know, supporting a client trying to make a decision about maybe one transaction, but then it could be something as wild as, you know, where is the energy industry going in 30 years? So, yeah.
Thank you, Dozie. Gelila, do you want to talk a little bit about what your job looks like?
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Gelila. I am a research analyst. So I'm actually a recent graduate from Bryce University, and I finished with my master's in global affairs this past week. So I'm finally graduated. And prior to that, I was actually also doing management consulting like Dozie, but I'll talk more about policy analyst and policy research positions that I've had sort of the pleasure to do the past 2 years. So when I was at Rice, I also worked at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research and at the Baker Institute for Public Policy. And there I was doing mostly data analyst and research assistant positions. And in these roles, I basically, my day in the life was, I come in, I check in with the research advisor. So there's usually a head researcher on a project. We talk about sort of the agenda for either the week or the day, and we outline what kind of data we want to look at, because in a lot of these research projects, they're stuff that it's projects that had started 2-3 years ago that researchers jump on. They take years to analyze, and there's tons and tons of data to look at. So in short, I'm a data analyst. I gather data from the community. So when I was at Baker and both at Kinder, we were looking at a subset of the Houston community. We were looking at health and child safety, community safety information, and the work of all that accumulated to a policy recommendation to the city of Houston, or in Baker's case, we were advising HISD. I also briefly worked with an oil and gas company here in Houston this past few months. And there I was also a researcher, but specifically on technology trends for the oil and gas industry, and also looking at new innovators, newcomers to the industry and how they can elevate and create progress in a very traditional area. Yeah, so that's sort of in a nutshell what my career has been.
Great, thank you. I mean, I think one thing that I've heard, throughout all three of you is probably like communication, data collection and problem solving are things that you guys have to do on an everyday basis. And, that's great because I think that's what, we try to emphasize, in my class. And that's one of the things we try to do at PEAC. So thank you for that, guys. Now moving on, one of the questions that, I've been asked a lot recently is, now that COVID-19 has happened, it's changed the way we work, the way we live. And, with that being said, within your field, what skills do you think are going to be more relevant, in a post-pandemic world, moving forward? So any three of you, whoever wants to start.
Yeah, let me take it. Let me start. I agree with how you transitioned with this question. A lot of the skills that we learn in high school or even college, sometimes we don't see how they're gonna help us on our real life or on our professional life. But the truth is that, every day we start to develop or to polish certain skills that make us who we are. For example, you said communication, that's a great example, or analysis, for example, math. I don't do any math, or, I just do like simple math whenever I have to calculate prices or I have to, do minor equations for a contract or whatever. But the way that math shapes the way you analyze or you face a problem does help you on who you become and what you do. So in my specific case, now that we are dealing with COVID, I work in a profession that has allowed me to be almost 100% fully capable of doing my work exactly as I was doing it before, just because all I really need is a computer, Zoom, Wi-Fi, a cell phone. And with that, with those tools, I'm able to, draft a contract, be available via email or through my phone with either the partner that I work for or my client or the associate that work with me. But the dynamic has changed a little bit. Just like you guys are right now going to school remotely, and you guys have to watch the videos from the from the professor teaching math, and then you have to answer online and all of that. Dynamics are changing, and it's the same with my industry. So right now, maybe you don't have as much face-to-face mentorship, but still, we are learning to be able to communicate more effectively and know that, people in a sense are, maybe more available than before, because that they have, I know that I have to be near a computer because if something comes up, I have to be there. That doesn't mean that I have to be always right in front of the computer ready to answer something. I can go out, take a walk or go for a run, then come back and always kind of like be ready to be available for my client or my partners. So the challenge with this is, of course, and I guess this is a challenge that is also for you guys going to school, in your houses, is, for me, is trying to deliver the same quality of service, or at least the same quality of work product to my client and to my partner. And for you guys, it's the same thing, right? You guys have to optimize and maximize your learning experience and make sure that you are, doing the right things to learn whatever you have to learn, so that you don't fall behind. You don't want to fall behind. So I think, communication and being able to adapt to this, to at least the new normal as we know it right now, is definitely something that are skills that you learn and that I have to work on during this pandemic.
Yeah, but I couldn't agree more. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that was really important, Eduardo. I think the adaptability, and it was interesting that the last project I talked about, while we were doing it, the COVID situation got worse and we started working from home. And some of the insights from the project were already telling me, were making it clear to me that we need to be more adaptable as a society, as as professionals, as students. That things will change, and the environment is changing, and the way we interact with the environment is, I think it's putting us in a situation where I assume that we're going to have more disruptions, right? So there are a few things I wrote down while you were speaking. For one, I think you touched on this a lot. Working from home, being able to adjust to that, right? Like maybe picking a profession where you can be effective, even if you're not in the same room with people. So that's something to think about. Another one is the economic downturn. So what COVID has done, I think the impact that I have struggled with understanding the most is, the economic situation, because you have people predicting that there will be a recession for maybe 2 years. Some people think it will take 3 years before there's a full recovery. So just keeping that in mind, and I think that influences how you think about careers, what you study, what kind of work you do, and like I said, I think taking even pandemics aside, I think climate change is enough to create more disruptions, whether it's bad weather, famines, hurricanes, things like that. So I feel like we're growing up in a world where we will have to be more adaptable. Like things will change. So being able to work from home, being able to earn in any environment, being able to, and also being active in your community to address some of these things, right? Like if you feel like your policymakers aren't engaging. So there are three points I think I would share. One is tech and digital skills. So for me, being that I started off with a technical background, what this has reminded me is maybe I need to sharpen those skills. And maybe I should go back to coding, because I think skills like that help you, be more useful in a world like that. And then just generally digital skills, using Zoom. You'll be surprised at how difficult using digital tools can be for people who don't engage with it that much, right? So I think in this world we're moving into, you need to be very conversant with digital tools. Then another one is entrepreneurship. I think while you're in high school, if you can focus a little bit more on entrepreneurship, like no matter what it is, just having that mindset of, selling a vision, building a team around it, I think will make you resilient. You may not end up pursuing it as a career, but just knowing that you can do it, I think gives you more confidence to deal with the unknown, right? Because I think the fear now, you have people who lose their jobs and they just have to wait until they find a job, right? It would be nice if you know that, hey, I can actually create something, right, through entrepreneurship. And then finally, I think this one is probably the most important to me now, is financial independence. I think because the economy had done so well for so many years, a lot of people forgot about the basics of financial planning, savings, things like that. So I think while you're in high school, it's something, if you can get into any financial literacy class, if you can use Google to find stuff, just get comfortable with building a more financially stable future. Because earning so much isn't I think the most important thing, because you can earn a lot and spend a lot also. And then when something like this happens, when there are health issues and economic issues, you find yourself stranded. So I think that if you work on these three things, I feel like you may have a good shot at, you know, thriving in whatever world we go into.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I feel like both Eduardo and Dozie, you guys covered most of my points. But if I could add a few things, I would say being comfortable to work on your own. I think we've been so socialized into working with others, and the past few decades have been all about teamwork and open space and everything like that, that now that we're isolated, a lot of the productivity that people are facing, or lack of productivity, has to do with that disconnect, you know, the physical disconnect of not working with people. So as a researcher, something that I've learned in the past is, besides really checking in with my advisor once in a while, I was mostly an independent worker in most of my projects. And it really helped me to prepare to become more resilient and independent when, you know, you're physically forced to be on your own, sometimes checking in once in a while on Zoom. So kind of learn and be comfortable to work by yourself, to hold yourself accountable, give yourself schedules. Even if things go back to normal where you're in a team, in an office environment, don't just rely on your managers to manage you, right? Learn how to be your own self-manager. And it really will take you far, whether you want to do it as an entrepreneur, as a lawyer, wherever you're going. It doesn't mean that you have to be antisocial. It just means that you're a better manager, self-manager. I think the other thing that I've learned in my career and in school is be a really good crisis management analyst. So what does that mean, right? Not a lot of us have expected a pandemic to happen, or we don't know what's going to happen next, and it might be good, it might be bad, but it will still be unexpected. And oftentimes we don't have sort of a plan of, okay, what if there was 20 big scenarios I can think of for the next year, how do I adjust, right? And a lot of adjustments in life come from having plans in the back end. That could be for yourself, for your family, for your team. Just think about how to be your own crisis management lead, right? I learned that in undergrad or in grad school, and it was so funny because the last course I took was a crisis management course last semester. And then this happened, and I learned so much from that class about preparation, about communication, about, you know, being able to take the negative and turn it into something positive, because it's not a shock. You've kind of given yourself that space to say anything could happen. How do I adjust better? So I know it's kind of building off of Dozie's, you know, be flexible and adjustable, but add that crisis management skills on top of that to it.
I mean, all of that was really great. I'm just trying to write all of it down, and I'm going to kind of just repeat a little bit the key points that you guys all said. So you said communication, adaptability, having, you know, skills in the tech side of things, coding, entrepreneurship, you know, being organized, and being able to, you know, have these crisis management skills, I think will all be, you know, important in the post-pandemic world. So thank you for that. So moving forward, just based on, you know, your personal experiences, you know, was there something in your high school or college experiences that kind of changed the trajectory of your career? Was there like a job opportunity, an internship, a mentor? You know, because I think people on this, you know, audience would benefit from hearing, you know, a little bit about how you guys kind of came into your roles.
Okay, maybe I'll take that one first. And man, there's so much that comes to mind. So I'll just say maybe two key things. So I think one, in high school, I fell in love with math. So I liked econ, I love math a lot. And that proved to help me through up till this point. So like diving deeper into math, and I went to high school in Nigeria. We had something called further math, which was like, you know, the extra, I guess maybe equivalent of like AP math or something, I don't know. And I did that, and I find out to this day, it still gives me as much flexibility. So when I talk to my mentees, for people who have that inclination for science and technology and things like that, I say, hey, get comfortable with math because, like I almost went to law school, while in business school. And I felt like I could pivot. So starting off that way, I felt gave me a good foundation. So it's definitely something that I feel good that I started with, because that's how I got into engineering, and but I've always been able to discover new things, and I haven't felt like I've been stopped. I studied public policy for a master's. I sucked at writing. I started coaching on that. So I found that if you have a good foundation in math, it's I feel like it serves you, depending on where you take your career. So I've seen friends who ran away from math and then wanted to do math later, and it was very difficult because they hadn't built that foundation. So that's something. Then through clubs, I found my own leadership philosophy. So I encourage people to take as much leadership opportunities when they're young, so that you can test your leadership skills, because you need this when you get into your professional career. So I was fortunate to take leadership roles in high school and college, and that helped me. I love the point about being a self-manager, Gelila. I think that's critical. Learning how to manage yourself, I think, is very useful. And planning things. So don't take things for granted, right? Like just being organized, planning, I think, is useful. The most important point, I think, was the value of mentorship and role models or inspiration. So I'll give you an example. I went to undergrad at Ole Miss. So I'm a kid, Nigerian kid at Ole Miss, freshman year, and Obama debates with McCain on campus, and that was really exciting for us. And then he won. And I'm going to school in Mississippi, right? Mississippi is probably not the most progressive state. Obama winning, a lot of the success I've had in America, I think I owe to the inspiration I got from when Obama won. So just seeing a black man, get to that point, all of a sudden just got us so pumped, right? So I was really inspired to do a lot. So I got very involved in school. I took my studying very seriously. And I feel like that momentum has carried me all the way, right? Because once you start to open doors, you start to believe more in yourself and things. When I was fortunate to find mentors very early on in my career in the US who supported me when I was in school, and some of them I still use as advisors still today. So I think when looking out for role models was useful, but the mentors, I think, were very critical in helping me, because sometimes you don't know. You're not too sure about what's out there. So it's nice to have people who believe in you, who can then say, okay, I think you can open that door too. Go try, right? And that has helped me a lot. Now I have way more self-confidence than I had, because now I know more and I've accomplished more. But I think that those critical years of high school, college, I think the mentors made a big difference. So it's something I would recommend you seek out.
Thank you.
I want to add to that too. And I was mentioning to the group earlier, when I was in high school, I participated in a mentorship program. So I also was born and raised in Ethiopia. When my family moved here, we basically did not have any career connections to, people that, a lot of the people that we knew here in Houston were not in the sort of career that I wanted to be in. So this mentorship program was outside of my high school, and I had to find it. And I would really encourage you guys to look beyond what's just available, in your high school or maybe in your immediate environment. This was something that I had to research and see that the district was offering, and they weren't even advertising it. But that completely changed my career trajectory. So in this mentorship program, they, first of all, help you identify what you're passionate about. It's sort of like a class that you take for a whole year. The first half is really career development within the different students who are selected to be part of this program. And then the second half, you're partnered with a mentor in the field of your choice. So in the first half, I thought about it. I really liked policy. I liked law. And then I came up with a research topic that I wanted to work on. And next semester, the semester that followed, I was partnered with a law firm called King & Spalding Law Firm in downtown. And that was my first exposure to sort of the professional world in the US, honestly. I'd never been in an office setting. I'd never been in a business or law setting. And those lawyers took me under their wings. I both learned to be independent, but also work under the guidance of lawyers on a project that I was passionate about. And that really helped me learn about even college applications. And after that, they became more than mentors. They became my job references, right? They opened me up to a whole network of not just, I wouldn't say just career opportunities, I would say sort of a lifestyle and mentorship and advisorship. And I'm really glad that I took the effort to look for that opportunity when I was a sophomore in high school, to be able to apply for it. And I encourage you guys, I think mentors and programs like this where people are sharing their career advice really helps you kind of figure out this unknown phase, which we all kind of go through in college and beyond.
Thank you for that, Gelila. Eduardo, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think Dozie and Gelila, I think to their point, well, first of all, every experience that you have in high school and college will start shaping wherever you want to go. So I always tell people, you know, whenever they start building their resume or whenever they want to find a job or do something specifically in a certain industry, I always tell them, you know, you have to start doing things that talk about your interest in that specific industry. So for example, I used to live in Dallas, and I used to do just general international law and international transactions. And then I said, well, I want to start doing energy transactions. So what do I have to do? I have to start adding things to my resume that speak to my interest to do energy transactions. So, you know, you start, you know, you join a club, you join an association, you write a paper, you start doing the things, you find a mentor, you join leadership classes or whatever that starts to shape you towards that path. And then, you know, that's how I ultimately ended up here in Houston. And it was the same thing. It's the same thing. You start with all of this in high school, right? So I remember when I was in high school, at some point I wanted to learn how to write. So, you know, you join like the book club or like the writing club. I was taking French lessons, so I joined the French Mexican Association. And like Dozie said, you know, don't be afraid to take leadership positions. Don't be afraid to be the guy who says, okay, you know, I'll raise my hand and I want to be the president next year of this club or of this association. Because it really helps you to you develop other skills like, you know, being a team member or, you know, learning how to lead. That at the end of the day, you know, they will help you one way or another. And, you know, like I think I have a lot of experiences and things that I would like to say, but, you know, the one thing that I would just to follow on what Dozie and Gelila were saying on the mentorship part, I never had a mentor. So, and for example, nobody in my family went to law school. They're all engineers. So for me, going to law school and trying to become a good lawyer was always kind of like trying to, you know, discover the world. You know, every day was like a new thing, and I didn't know, like, where should I find a job? Like, is it the same thing being a litigator or a corporate attorney? Like, I had no idea. And having a mentor would have helped me a lot. And that's why, you know, if you wrap up everything that Gelila and Dozie said about mentorship, I would add, you know, like, having a mentor might help you avoid a lot of mistakes and kind of like guide you towards the right direction quickly, which will be a great advantage for you. I think, you know, I think that's all I have for this portion. But yeah, you know, be sure to do things that you that want to speak about you. Be sure to be around people that have the same interests as you, smarter people than you. Always kind of try to learn more, and that will start to, you know, shape the person that you're going to become, or the person that you want to become.
No, I mean, I think everything you guys said was really important. And, you know, it's important to hear, you know, Eduardo's story, you know, like not having anyone, no one in his family was in law, but, you know, he still pursued the field and, you know, took that initiative and took, you know, the risk. But, you know, it's good to hear from both sides because, you know, some people say like, oh, I wouldn't have gone, you know, with my parents. But I think that's a really important thing. And then I think speaking on the fact of role models and mentorship, I think that's a very important thing. It's not mentioned a lot. And I think seeking out a mentor or coming under some kind of mentorship program would definitely be beneficial for everyone. So thank you for that, guys. Now, I think this might be our last question before we get into Q&A. But one of the things that we believe in at PEAC is that, you know, service and leadership go hand in hand. So, you know, you guys all being leaders, what is the role service has played in making you a leader in your current field?
I can take that. So my passion for policy really roots itself in service. Prior to this, I went to my undergrad degree was in business, and I have experience in management consulting. And I've always thought about how does that relate back to service, and that's why I really pursued my graduate degree in public policy. And when pursuing public policy as a new career, I kind of thought about in high school and college what really motivated me into being an actor, right? That thing that makes you wake up every single day and say, okay, what can I do? For me, it was really around water disparities. Just growing up in Ethiopia, I kind of connected it to my own experience. And I had the opportunity to volunteer at a few organizations that provide water. But I wanted it to be more than just service and charity. I wanted to see how does that relate back to politics and economy. So for me, service really crafted the career that I'm pursuing right now. I don't know if you guys are aware of organizations like Charity Water or Stream of Hope. These are water organizations. They're pretty big and they provide water around the world. But they work on a charity model, and oftentimes it's not sustainable. But the other part of it that I want to understand is like, how do these natural resource disparities really impact the political life, the economic life of the communities, not just in those countries, but here in the US or in Europe, where you don't really think about water being an issue. So I would say try to find something that you can serve as, you know, whether it's a volunteer opportunity. So for me, I volunteered with these organizations at Charity Water and Stream of Hope. And then that's how I kind of started learning about the problem and then figured out how I can craft a career around it, where you can continue to be a volunteer, or you can also find, you know, you can be a lawyer who focuses on that specific issue, or a management consultant who can provide their pro bono services in that aspect. And it really creates another dimension to your career, adding service and leadership. And that's what I really encourage you guys to include in your career path is, how do I embed service as not just like an add-on, not like a nice to have once a year thing, but how do I include it in part of my career planning?
That's fantastic. While you're speaking, I was reflecting on something that Eduardo talked about, about doing things to show interest and pursue, and I think you touched on that too. I think that has been my approach to service and even career. So, like when I wanted to figure out what to study in undergrad, I remember talking to my dad, who wasn't an engineer about the issues I was most passionate about in Nigeria. We had like the technology infrastructure issue. We don't have all the infrastructure you see and take for granted in the US. So that's how I decided to study electrical engineering. When I had, because of my engagement in the community, there were some policy issues that were really close to my heart, that were really bugging me. For example, how minorities in America are treated, investing in emerging markets, creating business opportunities for less privileged communities. So I decided to go study Masters in Public Policy. Now I'm working more in business, and I'm trying to figure out how to use business, to address some of the issues I have, because I think the business leaders we have today may not be as focused on the issues that I care about and the communities I serve care about, right? So it's nice to have some representation. So the way I think, early on, I tried to engage with mentorship programs, and like I would, like in undergrad, I would mentor people, Black and Hispanic people from low-income communities that may not have had a role model, right? And I thought that was really useful. I did Engineers Without Borders, for example, where we, was about developing engineering projects in places that normally may not get as much opportunities. And now I have a pro bono advisory firm. So I do free consulting work for small businesses and businesses in markets that are underserved, like in Africa or in poor communities in the US. So I think what I think is important, I think if you forget everything, just remember what Eduardo said, where if you're interested in something, get exposed to it. So if you're in your community and something doesn't look right, get your friends together and try and do something about it, right? Join a club that's doing something about it. And I think that's kind of how you get to that long-term career. Because I get very nervous when I meet people who have a very long-term career, and in between there's really not much, there's no plan, right? So it's like, oh, I want to be a scientist someday. But then in the moment, there's nothing you're doing that shows you have passion for science. So I think service is the same way, where you shouldn't just wait for 30 years when you've made all the money and you have all the connections to address a problem. I think you should be led by things you feel uncomfortable with already in your community. Say, hey, I don't like that. This is not right here. So I'm going to do something about it. And then as you learn, it can influence what you study, where you work, what kind of career you pursue, what kind of mentors you pursue. I think to me, that's a more realistic approach, right? Versus like sitting down and trying to craft a grand plan, right? I think the plan comes from getting close enough to the problem to figure out the root causes. So as I've engaged with some of the things I talked about, it has helped influence my career. And so even when I thought about going to law school, it was because I was worried about the trade deals. Because as I got closer to working in poor countries, I realized that they've signed so many trade deals that put them in a bad position. So I said, it would be nice to be a trade lawyer, right? I wouldn't have thought about being a trade lawyer if I hadn't come close enough to what poor countries were going through. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Eduardo, do you want to add anything?
One thing that I was thinking while Gelila and Dozie were participating is, I think service, in a way, I was making like an analogy in my mind with networking. We hear a lot about networking or finding a mentor and doing things so that you are better connected, so that they help you advance your professional career or your high school experience. And the thing with networking is that you have to do networking whenever you don't need it. So it's very, it's different to network so that I can get advantage of that network in 5 or 10 years than networking today because I want to get a job tomorrow, or networking today because I want to get a client tomorrow, or because I want to get something get something immediately. And service and leadership, they are like that. They are like networking, because the skills that you develop through leadership or the service that you put into your community, you will not see the benefits immediately. And believe me, there are benefits, And so if you don't do, if you're not, if service is not a calling like it was for Dozie and Gelila, if you are more of like a selfish guy, service will, you're gonna benefit a lot of doing service just by doing it itself. And what I mean is, there's a lot of, the spillover effect of getting involved in organizations, of doing things for your community. They have a great benefit for you, personally, professionally, as a student, as a son, as a daughter. So just think about that, and think that for example, Dozie, Gelila, and myself, we're part of this Global Shapers group, and Vishal as well. I'm not getting paid to be here. I have to work right after this conference, and I have some other things to do. But I know that either through this or through my experience at my club or my organization, I'm getting some other things that I know that are going to be good for me. And I have satisfaction just to serve in the community or just to do things for the community. But I also have that kind of like that backstop satisfaction of knowing that I'm in a sense also kind of like helping myself. So think about that, and think about it's never, whenever I go to a networking event, it's like if I make a new friend or if I make one new connection, like the worst thing that can happen is that that nothing happens. And the best thing that can happen is that I get a lot of benefit from that connection or from that event or from that thing. So so don't be shy, and don't be don't be shy. If you have the opportunity to meet a new person, do it. If you have the opportunity to join an organization that you think you will benefit from it, do it. You won't be married to it. If you want to change, you can just change, start something else or do whatever. But, just be outgoing in that. So I think that's it.
Thank you for that, guys. I think you guys are putting some fire on these guys with all the stuff you guys are saying. Thank you. So I think what we're going to do now, I don't think we have time for the last question, but we're going to open it up to Q&A for like the last 10 minutes. So either you guys can come off of mute and ask a question, or you can ask it in the chat and I'll read it out.
Hey, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Gelila, Dozie, and Eduardo for sharing your experiences and wisdom. At one point, I feel like we're bound to kind of recover from this virus and kind of return back to a sense of normalcy. When that does happen, how do you see your industries, being different in that point, and what changes are going on now that will, allow for progress, let's say 5 years down the road in each of your industries?
Maybe I can respond very quickly to that one. And then, Eduardo and Gelila, you can go ahead. So I think for consulting, a big one will be travel. I don't think people will be as comfortable traveling because the model we've used is, I travel on Monday and fly back on Thursday or Friday. I think that's, I felt that was problematic for climate change, right? Just thinking about how much, jet fuel is used with me kind of running around the globe. So I think with the pandemic, people are going to be less willing to travel. So one way things will change is there's probably going to be more remote work, and clients will, maybe influence how we think about travel. Say maybe come once every month or once every other week, right? Rather than being in the air every week. So that's definitely one thing. And I think generally it's a threat to the value that management consulting provides. So we'll have to rethink, like, do you really need consultants for that piece of work that you want to do? And if you do, can you have maybe a team internal, like an internal consulting team work on that? So there's something I've been thinking about.